Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's be free Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free.
Hey, I'm here. God, and I got to see there's lots of people in the comments. And I also see that Vicky lost her friend today, so I want to express my sympathies. I have mine here with me. It'll cheer me up to think about it. He has to be on my lap, so sorry guys. Hope you guys don't mind. As you hopefully remember, this is my card, the pet sympathy card that we jazzed up with some easy techniques. So I did want to talk to you a little bit about taking an insert card. Hopefully you guys are familiar with those. They kind of look like this. Some of them are very plain like this, and they're pre-made designs that you can get in Cricut Access. And I like to dress these up a little bit because they're kind of plain. At least some of them can be quite plain. So I did want to show you that here's the before and here's the after. So I used Distress Oxides on this to blend over the greeting. And then hopefully you can see I've added some glitter dots, the liquid stuff, into the cutouts in order to give it a little bit of pizzazz. And then here's that first one I showed you that's pretty plain. And here I used Distress Inks and I blended it around that sun from the inside to the outside. And then I added some of the glitter dots on the heart there. So hopefully that can inspire you a little bit with things you can do with these really easy cards. And here's a more fancy insert card that looks pretty good, on its own, not quite as plain, but I jazzed it up a little bit with some extra metallic marker, some sequins, a few of those dots as well, the liquid dots. I love those. So I just wanted to share those with you, give you a little bit more of inspiration of things you can do with your Cricut cards to, dress them up, make them look a little better. So does anybody have any questions? I do. So Betsy asked, does this class have an SVG file for the card? I didn't see one on the VIP page. Yes, if you click the freebie link, it will take you to where you get the file download. And yes, thank you to the presenter's presentation page to grab the free. And then when you get to that page, I have an additional freebie in case anybody's interested that with matching envelopes for the card with the paw cutouts on the flap. So you can get that there as well. Anything else? Anybody want to know anything? I've got a lot of card making experience. What was the cutout of the water paper? Just the rainbow or the clouds also? Just the rainbow was cut out of the watercolor paper, Caroline. The clouds I did out of plain old cardstock. You only need to do the watercolor paper for anything where you're going to use watercolor pens, markers to blend and create that effect. Aaron asks, what is my dog's name? My dog's name is Django, like Django Unchained or Django Reinhardt, if you're familiar with him. The D is silent. He's an old guy. He's 12, so he's turning all gray, unfortunately, but he's my sweet buddy. He's a rescue dog. We got him at the Dumb Friendly. Brandy's asking me, how did I get started in crafting? Well, I started crafting when I was a small child. I have several aunts who are very arts. I have an aunt who's a professional artist, and I have a couple that are just very crafty. And when I was a kid, I used to go to their houses in the summer and they would teach me different crafts. So I started out with like sewing and cross stitch and hardanger. Like I have some Norwegian ancestry, so hardanger is a big craft there. And then in the 90s, I started watching the Carol Duvall show. Does anyone remember that show? I loved that show. And that's what got me into stamping originally. And then in 2016, I actually started my blog as a traditional card making blog. So I did stamping and dyes and coloring, a lot of coloring with Spectrum Noir markers. And I was on the Elizabeth Craft Designs design team for a couple of years, if anybody is familiar with them. And then I kind of got burned out, so I stopped for a while. And then in the pandemic, I had to take a leave from my job because I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I'm at high risk for a bad outcome with COVID. So I was thinking, trying to keep myself busy, and I was like, well, I'm going to start my blog again. So I started back up again, and I decided that I just really loved the electronic cutting machine crafts, which I've been doing since, I don't know, like 2010, and decided to focus on those instead. So I kind of pivoted, and now I do that exclusively, and I design SVG files for those as well. Cattywampus Crafter, I love it. Harriet, if someone is having trouble centering the cards with the joy, what would you recommend? Oh, yeah, that is tough. Are you talking about, well, if you're using the card mat, like for example, I have kind of figured out like where on the card mat I have to stick my card to get it to be mostly centered. It does not always work, unfortunately. So I recommend having a paper trimmer and just trim off, like either bump the card all the way up to the top of the mat, so you're going to get that extra space on the bottom, so you can just trim it off really easily, or try to center it as much as possible, and then trim off whatever isn't centering the card, because nobody's going to notice, like if you've lost a 1/16 of an inch off of an A2 size card, say for an envelope. Hope that helps. Gives you a little tip on how to center your cards. Unfortunately, I think with some of that, there's no way around it. Tiffany Slurry, do you create other things other than cards? Well, yeah. I mean, I've done some vinyl things. I've got a sublimation printer. I have done some mixed media, like over my shoulder here. Wait, where am I here? Right there. Is a mixed media piece that I did, but I dabble just a little bit in that stuff. Haven't done that in a while. And I've got my logo here that I painted. So I do other things other than cards. Betsy asks, Elena, have you tried the Cricut watercolor markers or the Dollar Tree watercolor paper? $3 for 24 sheets. $350 GSM, so even thicker than what you use. I have not used the Dollar Tree watercolor paper, but hey, it sounds like a good deal, especially for the technique I showed you. I mean, that's going to work just fine. You don't need any kind of fancy, expensive watercolor paper for that. I have the watercolor markers from Cricut. I have not used them yet. So I do have the watercolor cards and the markers around here somewhere that I intend to start trying, because I'm curious to see how those work, because it's another nice way to add like a little, like step up your insert cards maybe a little bit by drawing some of the things with the watercolor markers instead of the regular ones, and then doing a little bit of a watercolor effect on those could be fun. And I actually plan to start doing a lot more card specific posts. I'm beginning to really want to focus on that and paper crafting. So I'm going to be doing a series soon on like all the different Cricut types of cards, like the insert cards and the foil cards and the cutaway cards and all that stuff, as well as having a card making sort of book or ebook that will help hopefully answer questions that anybody has about how to make cards with a Cricut. Any other questions? Claudia asks, now that the Cricut has updated their cutting size, will you or can you resize your cards? Oh, absolutely. Yes, you can absolutely resize the cards to make them larger. That's kind of the great thing about vector graphs, SVGs. They're called scalable vector graphics, just in case you're wondering, because you can scale them up or scale them down and you don't get any loss of quality in the graphic. So, you know, any of my designs, anybody's designs really, you can scale up or down. Now, I do have some cards that are pretty intricate, and so I would not recommend that you shrink them down, say, because sometimes some of the cuts are really small and really delicate, and so making them smaller wouldn't work. But I would tell you that usually in the instructions or in a video that I might do about the card. So Ardith wants to know, what is my favorite type of card to make? Oh boy. Christmas. Definitely Christmas. I am a Christmas fanatic. So yeah, I really like Christmas cards. And I like to make lots of different ones and send out. Nobody gets the same card. Well, I mean, I'll send out like, say, 5 of this one to people and 5 of that one to other people and that kind of thing. So Christmas is my thing for sure. Evie, hey, how are you? Evie asks, please discuss the use of different weights of cardstock. Some of my cards start to feel a little bulky. What weight do you use for card and or embellishments and envelopes? I like the use of the inks. Thank you. All right, so cardstock is my nerdy obsession. So anytime, any card base that you are making, you need to use a heavyweight cardstock. So you need to be using minimum, in my opinion, 100 pounds or 300 GSM. And unfortunately in the US, they don't always give you the GSM. So you can get a 100-pound cardstock that is not heavy duty cardstock. I even have some paper here as an example. So let's see. So this is a 100-pound cardstock that is like a really inexpensive one. Maybe you can hear the flapping. That I got at like Office Depot. Versus this is a Gina K, and you can even see when I hold them, the difference in like the stiffness of the paper. So this is the Gina K, and that's the really cheap stuff. So if you don't know the GSM weight of a cardstock, then you should feel it. Like if you can at all possibly feel it. Because like really inexpensive cardstock generally isn't going to do the job real well, especially when you're looking for heavier weight cardstock. Now, I personally really like cheap Michaels Recollections cardstock, 65 pound, 176 GSM, for things like top layers, because it's thinner, and especially if you're cutting things out with a Cricut and it's a complicated cut, that is a really good weight for those more difficult cuts. Because when you get into heavier cardstock than that, you can wind up really, the blade has a really hard time cutting through the heavier weight. And especially if it's a real intricate, like, so it has to make a lot of turns or a lot of scrolly cuts, it won't be able to do it. So I'm a big fan of Michael's Recollections 65 pound, 176 GSM for top layers on cards. Now, if you're going to do a lot of like alcohol inks, or, well, alcohol inks is a totally separate thing, but like distress inks or ink blending, that doesn't work real well on all kinds of paper. So you're going to have to experiment there. And Copic coloring doesn't work on all kinds of paper either. So things like Concord and Ninth has paper called Smooth White. That was like became my favorite Copic coloring paper. And it also works really well for alcohol ink blending. And then Bristol Smooth that you can get at like Michael's or a general craft store. That is a really good one for alcohol ink, or not alcohol ink, distress inks, distress oxides, and alcohol ink coloring. And then if you like alcohol ink backgrounds, I love Yupo, but I'm sure Tiffany could tell you more about that than I can. And I missed that question, sorry. Heather, I would like to start with some of the distressed inking. Can you recommend some colors to start with? Oh, sure. It kind of depends on what you like. If you like more brights versus more kind of toned down colors, if you're into kind of that vintage look, then I would say you want to go with some of the neutrals, like, old paper, antique linen, black soot is a great one, ground espresso. Those are all good like neutrals for adding darker, or, browns, blacks, that kind of thing. I'm a big fan of brights, so I personally love like picked raspberry, carved pumpkin, salty ocean, tumbled glass, wilted violet is a favorite of mine. Boy, I could go on and on. I even have like a swatch. You can kind of see if I can do this up here. Wait, no, there, right there. I have a swatch thing where I've stamped out all the colors, so I know which color is which. So then I use that to figure out what I'm going to use to coordinate together with. I've got it for markers, and I have it for the distress inks and the distress oxides. I started out with distress inks with the mini ones, and like I would just buy a few sets and try them out to sort of determine which ones I liked, and then eventually I bought them all. I hope that helped. Yorkies in space, nice. If you already own a Cricut, does that make a die cutting machine redundant? No. So there are two different things. So a die cut machine, like I have a Gemini, for example, that's for use, or a what's the fancy one? Well, anyway, that's for use with metal dies. So like they're physical dies that are made out of metal that then you run through with paper through your die cutting machine to cut the image out or whatever it is. A Cricut or a Scan and Cut, that's cutting via a software program. So it's cutting an electronic version kind of that metal die. So it's having a software program tell it what the design is to cut, whereas like a die cutting machine is going to tell it's going to just use that metal die to cut. So there's no like computer involved. I hope that makes sense and that answers the question. Gina Kovac, you just got 110-pound Recollections from Michaels. Is that a good one for outside and inserts? That'd be a good one for like an envelope or a card base, definitely. depending on the type of cuts that you're doing with it, if it's a really simple design, then you can definitely use that for like an insert card too. I would not recommend that for something that's going to be a more complex SVG design if you're using it for Cricut cards. It's great for just regular cards too. Inserts, or like as an insert for an insert card, it would work. Insert for an envelope, it might be a little bit too thick, like a liner. Claudia says, that's awesome that we can use our Cricut/Cameo silhouette to make cards. Yes, definitely a money saver. New at card making, is this your favorite method? I've seen so many different amazing methods. Yes, there are so many methods. It's now my favorite method, but as you can tell from my tutorial, there are a lot of times where I feel like the designs that are available to purchase for cards for a Cricut or a silhouette are kind of plain, and they lack the depth that you get with a more like hand stamped, hand colored looking card. And so that's why I like to teach people like how to add some extra special touches to a cut card. Now, you don't always have to do that, obviously, because there are a lot of ones that are really cute. The cards that I design, I try to design them to be a little more intricate or layered. I often do a lot of layered looks to kind of mimic that look. I don't know if you're familiar with the dies where there's say like multiple dies that create a layered look on a card front. And those are really gorgeous, but they're like $80 to buy all three of them. So I kind of decided I'm going to try to mimic that look, but with electronic cards instead, which are a lot less expensive. Claudia says, I've seen many courses in the card making summit and they use different ink pads. How is distress oxide different? So distress oxides have been specifically chemically made to react with water. Now, distress inks do that too, but distress oxides are a little different in that, like, distress inks are designed to blend and react with water. Like, you can spray them and the water will go away from them, but they don't stamp real well. Whereas distress oxides are kind of more of a hybrid ink, and so they actually stamp really well. But then you can also blend with them, and then you can also spray water on them, and they will get a more of an oxidized look, hence the name. So like if you spray, like one of like salvage patina or something, and you spray it, it's going to get the place where you sprayed it is going to turn more of a white or like look like it's been oxidized in the air, if that makes sense, versus the distress inks where it's really going to just repel the ink and be more of a lighter color or just a empty spot where the water was. I hope that makes sense. There are no other inks I know of, I mean, I could be wrong, that do that specific thing as far as the oxidation with water goes. They're similar in feel to some inks, like Catherine Pooler is great, and some other ones. It's been a while since I got any new inks. But that oxidation effect, I think, is only available with those inks specifically. And Tim Holtz does that very specifically for that reason. What is sublimation? Ardith asks that. Sublimation is the process where you take a printed image that is printed with sublimation ink. And sublimation itself is like when you heat the image onto polyester, the image, the ink during the heating process turns into a gas and then is infused, like literally infused into the fibers of the polyester. And so you can do it on like coatings on mugs, polyester shirts, pillow covers. The issue with it is that you can only do it on 100% polyester for whatever reason. Now there are ways around it. Like you can sublimate things onto glitter HTV. You can sublimate onto something called Easy Subli, which is a Caesar product that kind of gives you that look of like printable heat transfer vinyl, if you're familiar with that, but it is more durable for the long term because you're actually infusing the ink into the surface of that like substrate, as opposed to like heat transfer. Printable heat transfer vinyl is, similar, but it's not as durable or long lasting as a sublimation into something like Easy Subli would be, or definitely into like a polyester shirt, if that makes sense. Like, then it's forever, basically. Aaron asks, do you have a favorite image or shape for a cutout that is your go-to? No. I don't think I do. I like hearts quite a bit, but I'm also kind of partial to flowers. But it totally varies. Like I guess I'm probably more of like a nature person, so I probably do more in terms of designs. But I also like words a lot, like fonts and doing word designs too. So no clear answer there, no clear winner, unfortunately. I'm afraid. Mellory, I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name. That's cool. What is the best paper to use for distress oxide ink? I mean, everybody's probably going to differ a little bit. I personally really like Bristol Smooth. And then I also like Concord and Ninth's Smooth White, I think works pretty well for that. Generally, you have to have something that's very smooth to get a really nice blend for distress inks, generally speaking. It helps. Like if you can do it on any paper, really, but it's going to be a lot easier on something that's super smooth, in my experience. Gwen's, hello, Elena. You spoke about distress inks. Are those inks the same as the distress pigments or the combos? Can you speak a bit about that? Let me see what I got. I might have some here. So like distress inks look like this, or they come in a bigger size. Like this would be a distress. This is distress oxides, obviously. So different. Distress pigments, I haven't used, so I can't really tell you the difference there. I'm guessing that would be, I'm so out of the like stamping thing now that I don't keep up with the latest products, but I'm guessing that's a liquid, maybe like a distress stain kind of thing. And so obviously like the distress inks themselves are ink pads, and then there's refills that you can get that would work as like a liquid and can be used as like a watercolor because they react with water and they're translucent, so that they work similarly to a watercolor, although not really designed for stamping unless you're going for a rustic look in terms of stamps. Does that answer the question? Tanya asks, how will I find you on Instagram? My Instagram handle is @blacksheep303. There you go. It's like my website, but not with the .com. And then a lot of my other handles are Blacksheep303 Crafts. Like that's what it is on Facebook, Pinterest. My YouTube channel is Blacksheep303 Crafts is the like name for it, but the channel is actually called Blacksheep303. YouTube is probably the thing that I've concentrated on the most, where you will see the most stuff from me along with my blog. So if you want to check me out, that I would say go there and check out my blog. It's over. Oh wait, I'm backwards here. Over there or on the bar. And reminder for anybody who jumped on late, there is the freebie download of the card file. There is also a cat paw version, which is behind me here. And then there's a bonus freebie on my webpage. If you sign up for my email list, you can get matching envelopes with the paw cutouts. So I hope you will check those out. Any other questions or anything else I can answer? Hasn't this been great? Hasn't the summit been awesome? It's so amazing. and everybody involved in it who's behind the scenes that you guys don't see is really, really great too. Harriet, Ardith, Aaron, Brandy, of course, who's amazing. I hope you all are having a great time and learning a lot. I think this is such an amazing summit in terms of all different kinds of card making techniques that you can learn. And for beginners, who some of you have mentioned that you're a beginner, it's so great to see all the choices that you have in terms of card making, because they vary from, really, really simple and easy to super complicated but really cool. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and you can pick and choose what you want to do and just have fun playing. I'm a big fan of play, and try not to be too hard on yourself when you make mistakes, because mistakes are how you learn, right? All right, well, if that's it for questions, how long have we been going? Oh, about half an hour. So my time's probably coming to a short end, possibly. Can I get my computer going here? All right. Well, if you guys are done with questions, check me out again here. blacksheep303.com is my blog. You can get to my YouTube videos from there. You can see all my social media is on the menu bar there. You can probably search Black Sheep 303 on almost any platform and find me. I am not on TikTok though. Sorry, not yet, at least anyway. But YouTube is probably the biggest one for me. So if you're interested in video tutorials and want to see everything I've got, I also do tutorials for scan and cut and silhouette too. So as well as a lot of traditional card making videos from a few years ago. So you can check those out too. All right, so I'm gonna say bye, and so is my dog. Thanks, you guys. It's been great talking to you. It's so nice to meet everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend.